Okay, so you remember what I said about a unit rate being a ratio, right? So that means that the unit rate has to be a unit over a denominator of 1, right? And the example that we used was copper wire being sold at 50 cents per foot, right? So that looks like $0.5 or 50 cents, and I'll use my ratio colons per 1 foot, or $0.50 over 1 foot, right? Well, in your question, it's really a similar concept, right? Only they're using square yards. So we're going to say that the blackboard, right? You have a blackboard that's 1 1/3 square yards, right? And that's what it looks like. So if we think about what a square yard is a unit of area, right? It's a measurement of area. And area, this is area, and area equals length times width, right? And each of these, both length and width, can both be measured in yards, which is a measurement of distance, right? So let's draw out what that looks like. So let's say we have our blackboard, right? And this is our standard blackboard, rectangular blackboard, right? All right. So we know that the total area of this blackboard equals 1 1/3 yards, or square yards, right? Well, how did they get that? How did they get the area to equal 1 1/3 yards? Well, didn't we just say that square yards are a measurement of up here area, and area equals length times width, right? Cool. And we know that a length can be measured in yards and that a width can be measured in yards. So let's go ahead and look back at our drawing on the blackboard, right? We see this side here must have a measurement, right? So this side here we can label as a width. And this side here we'll measure as a length, right? Cool. And we know that we can measure this width in yards, right? And we know that we can measure this length in yards, right? Cool. All right, well now let's think about what this area means in regard to the length and the width of the chalkboard, right? So remember we said way up at the top that a unit rate is a unit over denominator of 1, right? And it's also thought of as a ratio. So the copper wire was every 50 cents per every 1 yard. So the area of this chalkboard is no different, right? Instead of two different units, which would be cents versus versus feet, we're just using two of the same unit, right? So we're asking for every yard of length, how many yards of width do we have, right? Cool, so let's check it out. So let's go ahead and plug in 1 1/3 yard for our width, right? Go ahead, 1 1/3 yard, right? Because this is the longer side of the chalkboard, correct? Okay, well if this is a unit over 1, and our unit here we'll say is yards, 1 1/3 yards, then we'll go ahead and put our length as 1, right? Cool. So now let's multiply 1 1/3 yards times 1 yard, right? Equals 1 1/3 square yards, right? Isn't that what that means? So your unit right here, for every 1 1/3 yard of width, you have 1 yard of length, right? So isn't that the ratio that we talked about a few minutes ago? It's kind of the same thing, right? So area was broken down into a ratio of yards to yards, right? Cool. So you can do the same thing with the poster that's going to go on the board. It said 8/9 of a yard, the poster was 8/9 square yards, right? So then you'd break it down to be the same thing. Maybe that's the poster, right? Or really, let's just do it all the way down here. Let's say here's your poster, and it's 8/9 yard to 1 yard, right? And so this is your poster, and it can be solved the same way, right? So that's what I meant by thinking about it that way. That's how you're breaking it down into a unit rate. So call me after you get this, okay? You back this up so you can see everything. You saw the step by step. But that's what we're looking at right there. Cool.